Okay, I think we are ready to go. I am coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. We started our little journey in the first couple of weeks from my hometown in Charleston, and then I was where I live in Chicago for I think a session, maybe two sessions, and now we're in Nashville. Now that makes no difference to anybody, and it doesn't make any difference to bias. But I just wanted to let you know, just in case you were wondering, like why does his background keep changing? I've got a conference here in Nashville, Tennessee this week. We are excited about our journey coming to this point. It's actually the end of this portion of the journey, but Haiti and I have decided that it is a great idea for us to have a session six. So we will have a session six. The only difference is you will be facilitating. I will not. In other words, and I want to be very clear about this. I see you, Martel. Let me open up my chat. You lived in Somerville, okay? Well, we got to talk. We got to talk. 19 years. Um, Session six will be your context. It'll be your responsibility. It'll be you with the people close to you in your sphere of influence. You've heard me mention that before. Or it'll be you receiving the information, however that looks. And so we're going to go over that in just a few minutes, give you an opportunity to write some of these resources down. So as a matter of fact, we're going to go ahead and begin that now. If you want to take out a sheet of paper or something to write with, session six is basically beginning now, because this is going to be your opportunity to take the reins. You are the facilitator now. So give you an opportunity to pull that out, something to write with or write on your mobile device or what have you, because I want to give you the resources that you all have been asking for. Here is what we are hoping to do today. I want to give you these resources, give you an opportunity to kind of ask some questions if you have any about the resources. Again, we know that the resources are what this session has decided that you all need. Remember, we took 2 weeks. We've really taken 4 weeks to kind of figure out what this looks like and digest, but more specifically, the last 2 weeks. So this is an opportunity for you to figure out what you need. And I'm going to share that with you. You share it with as many people as you need. And then Haiti will have a comprehensive list of all of the sessions. This is session 49 of 50. This is the 49th of 50 sessions since we started our journey 5 weeks ago. So she will have a comprehensive list of all of them. I don't know that all of them will be very helpful for you. I mean, you can just go do a Google search if you want to look up materials on bias, et cetera, et cetera. We've tried to custom tailor it as best we can for each of the sessions. And so we've given everyone an opportunity to receive that information, and then they can ask questions of us, et cetera. But we will have that exhaustive list for you if you desire. But today I'm going to give you a list that's specific to you. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the beloved community. Remember, we said that we wanted to start with wherever you were on that journey, whether it was just kind of evaluating the IAT and seeing what that assessment suggested for you as far as what your personal bias was. But we wanted to lead towards what Dr. King popularized as the beloved community. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then we're going to have a little bit of a special presentation today just to kind of cap things off. And I'm excited about that. So before I begin with the resources, any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? Anybody need an extra 5 seconds to get something to write with? Okay, great. All right, let me pull up my information. Okay, go ahead.
Were we randomly assigned to these groups? I think we signed up for the group that fit our schedule best, but was there any other?
Hey, do you want to take a stab at that?
No, it was whatever you picked in your registration form as far as the times. And that's what I sent you the invite.
Okay.
This is Phyllis. I can tell you that my manager assigned us to whatever session she chose. So I don't know if she had a reason for choosing us for certain sessions or not.
Yeah, it's a good question. I have done some trainings outside of bias and outside of reconciliation, in fact, and we actually brought in engineers to bring with some intentionality what the groups are going to look like, because we knew that the groups are going to have a lot of dialogue, and so sometimes we do that. We didn't do that here, though. So you just kind of lucked up and got in this group, Pamela. So, all right. Any other questions? All right, I'm pulling up my resources here. Give me just a second. Okay, let's start with the printed literature. Several of you said that you wanted children's books. So I'm going to start there. All the Colors. The full name of that book is All the Colors We Are. All the Colors We Are. And it's the story of how we get our skin color. It's a bilingual book, and it is by Kissinger. All the Colors We Are by Kissinger. Okay, I'm gonna keep going unless you say in the chat that you need me to repeat something, or if you just want to unmute if I need to repeat or whatever. The Proudest Blue. The Proudest Blue is by Ali, A-L-I, as in the boxer, Muhammad Ali. It's not the boxer, Muhammad Ali, but one of the co-authors who did the illustrations for that kid's book, their name is Ali. The next one is Intersection Allies. Intersection Allies. And that is by Johnson. Intersection Allies. It's all one word, incidentally, if that makes a difference. Intersection Allies. For this group, we've got a book called I Am Enough, another kid's book. I Am Enough by Byers, B-Y-E-R-S, Byers. I Am Enough. Here's another one for this session. 13 Ways. 13 Ways. The number 13 is spelled out on that one. 13 Ways. The full title is called 13 Ways of Looking at a Black Boy. 13 Ways, and that's by Medina. And it probably makes sense for me to make this statement here. If you hear me say that this is a book about looking at a Black boy, or this is a book about a Latina, and that is not your cultural demographic, that's probably the book for you. Because what it does is it opens up our lens from a different worldview. All of these books are going to talk about bias in some context or another, or reconciliation in some context or another, but it gives different perspectives. So if you say, oh, that's a book about an Asian, that's not mine. Yep, that one's yours. That one's yours. Does that make sense? Remember, we're trying to use our worldview and broaden that narrative.
How do you spell Medina by chance?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's Tony Medina, T-O-N-Y, and then Medina is M as in Mary, E as in elephant, D as in dog, I as in intelligent, N as in Nancy, A as in apple.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Here is one that was selected specifically for this group, but the others don't have this. It's called When We Were Alone. When We Were Alone. And that is by Robertson. David Robertson. These are kids' books. All right, we're going up a little bit to adolescence. So 4th grade and up. Harbor Me, Harbor Me, Harbor Me. That's by Woodson. Another one in that category, it's called The Undefeated. The Undefeated, and that is by Alexander. Jordan, you had a question? I see your hand raised. I'm not sure if that was intentional.
Yes, can you repeat the author for the Intersection Allies?
Sure.
Thank
Johnson. Johnson, as in Johnson and Johnson. Chelsea Johnson.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. For teenagers, American-Born Chinese. American-Born Chinese, that is by Yang, Y-A-N-G. American-Born Chinese. All right, one more for young adults. Just Mercy. Just Mercy. And that's by Stevenson. And I'll talk a little bit about him because Brian Stevenson, who he's prolific. He's a lawyer and an author, and has done a number of phenomenal things as a sociologist as well. He is continuing the work of Rosa Parks down at Montgomery, Alabama. If you don't know who Rosa Parks is, go ahead and Google Rosa Parks. Brian Stevenson, he has this work, Just Mercy, for young adults. There is an adult version, so I'm about to get to the adult books. So there's an adult version. There's also a movie when we get to the materials that you can watch. And then he is also the founder. I think he's still the CEO as well, but I know he's the founder of the Equal Justice Institute, EJI, and that's in Montgomery, Alabama. And let me just say, and so he is the only one, and his organization is the only one that's in every one of our categories: kids materials, adult materials, face-to-face learning, as well as visual learning, from a movie. He's the only one that's in every one of those categories. So I just wanted to highlight him. I've got an opportunity to work with him just a little bit and to see what they're doing. They just built a new exhibit down in Montgomery, unlike any exhibit on earth. And it will knock your socks off. If you want, you can just type in Brian Stevenson, Bryan, Stevenson, Stevenson, and I'm sure they're like YouTube clips or something like that, so that you can see like a little trailer of both the movie and the and what they're doing down there with that exhibit / museum. It'll knock your socks off, especially to see it in person. Oh boy. All right. So I'm going to go to the adult literature. I already mentioned Just Mercy. Winners Take All. Winners Take All. That is by Anand, A-N-A-N-D, as in dog. Winners Take All by Anand. Chokehold, one word, Chokehold by Butler. Chokehold by Butler. And again, these are all resources. You can choose which one you want to read and which ones you want to share. Kind of look through the materials. You don't have to read them all, but what's the phrase? But make sure you read or at least start to review at least one, right? Don't miss them all. You may not have to read them all, but don't miss them all. All right, that's Chokehold by Butler. A few others in the literature category. White Awake. White as in the color, Awake. And that's by Hill, Daniel Hill. Okay. God bless you. Haiti, was that you? So, okay. Be the Bridge. Now, a few of these will have small group materials. I'll talk about small groups in just a second. Be the Bridge is a very popular one, but I'm going to mention two that have a little bit of a Christian bent. Thank you, Rachel. There are others that are being highlighted in the chat. So if you have some that you want to share, by all means, you don't hesitate. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Be the Bridge is by Morrison. Now, Be the Bridge and Divided by Faith, which is by Emerson, Michael Emerson, those are particularly for Christians. I don't recommend them for everyone, because if you're not a person of faith, you may get, a person from the Christian faith, you may kind of get lost in some of the perspective. Divided by Faith comes from the premise of Dr. King saying that 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated, racially divided hour in America. And so Michael Emerson wrote a book about it. I've had an opportunity to work with him a little bit, and he knows what he's talking about, and that's a phenomenal book, particularly if you are a part of the Christian faith. Look, if you are a Christian, Divided by Faith is a good book to give your pastor. We've given that to pastors, and they have thoroughly appreciated it. So if you are a Christian, and I want to apologize because I do have a bias. I don't know as much about some of the other faiths, so I'm just pointing out about Christianity for those of you that might be there. So I do want to expose my bias. If I had done this well, I would have been able to give you more than just that Christian perspective, although we do have one book from the Islamic perspective. That's The Color Blue. All right. A couple of other books. I told you about Divided by Faith. The New Jim Crow by Alexander. If Brian Stevenson, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Could you tell me who the author is of Divided by Faith?
Yep, Michael Emerson, Emerson. Michael Emerson.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Where was I? I was talking about, The New Jim Crow. So if Michelle Alexander, who's the author of The New Jim Crow, or Brian Stevenson are in your hometown, assuming, when the pandemic is over with and people start going to conferences and different things like that again, clear your schedule. It's worth it. And if you attend, here's my promise to you. If you attend one of their sessions, Brian Stevenson or Michelle Alexander, and if you believe it was a waste of your time, just text me, connect with me on LinkedIn or something like that, or social media, Clary Butler, and I'll buy you lunch to make up for your time. That's how strongly I believe in the discourse that the two of them are presenting. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're going to agree with everything. Some of it, they give a little bit of social commentary. So in no way am I suggesting that you'll agree with everything that's in these materials. No, we haven't presented this course like that. We give you the information. We give you as much information as we can from a myriad of perspectives, and then we leave it up to you to make a wise decision, okay? All right, the last one is I Am Still Here by Brown, Austin Channing Brown. Chelsea Clinton, incidentally, and others from the political spectrum, not just, I believe she's a Democrat, I'm not sure. But others from the political spectrum, even Republicans, conservatives, et cetera, have endorsed that book. Brene Brown, if you all know, best-selling author Brene Brown, who's done a ton of work on vulnerability and transparency. She is a prolific author, not just for women, but she's, you know, she's done some fantastic work in the areas of feminism. So Brene Brown has also endorsed that book. So that's a good one. I'm Still Here by Austin Channing Brown, former colleague of mine. All right, any questions about the materials, about the printed materials before we move on to the next section? All right, so some of those materials have small group curriculum. I'm going to pause and talk about small group later, but as far as small groups are concerned, Be the Bridge, Just Mercy, and I'm Still Here. I know that those have small group out. Again, I'm going to talk about the concept of small groups if that's new to you in just a second, okay? Let me move to the audio video. So here are some movies or docuseries or documentaries or movie adaptations. When They See Us, When They See Us. It's Netflix. And I'm not going to go through for the sake of time, because I want to give you all an opportunity to kind of share your final thoughts near the end of our time, or at any point during our session today. And so I'm going to put that weight on you. If you're intrigued by any of these titles, you know, you can go to YouTube and you can pull up the trailer for free before, you know, downloading Netflix or some other streaming option. So I don't want to be disingenuous by not giving you a full layout of what these titles represent. When They See Us, the next one is 13th, as in the number 13, 1, 3, and then TH, 13th. It's also on Netflix. Highly, highly recommend. Highly recommend, but be prepared. It's not a popcorn movie. It's if you drink wine, it might be one of those wine deals where you've got to kind of sit down and say, oh boy. Okay, so be prepared for that one. That's 301, 401 level. I mentioned Just Mercy already. This one is a little bit more dramatic if you like the drama. The Hate You Give. The Hate You Give. I believe you can get that one on Amazon Prime. Selma. That's a good one. If you've been hearing about Dr. King, but either you or the people in your sphere of influence, they only know I Have a Dream. When you hear Dr. King, all they can really talk about is, you know, the I Have a Dream. Selma gives a different perspective, particularly as it relates to voting rights. And I think that this movie would be tremendously helpful if you have a conversation with anybody around what's going on in Georgia right now. So Georgia just passed a law to limit certain things like polling places and what have you, that would actually encourage people to vote, make it available for people to vote. It actually made it a little bit more difficult for some people to vote. And I believe the perspective is that they are trying to cut down on voter fraud, even though there was none in Georgia. So if you have anybody that's in the middle of that debate, it is highly contested right now. And if you popped on any of the major news outlets in America, what happened in Georgia is probably going to be near the top of the page from what happened yesterday. And so if you have that conversation, Selma is a good movie to suggest to your friends or for you to watch if you have not seen it. Okay. And that's a good drama adaptation. It's a reenactment. It's a full movie. It was in the theaters. All right, that's all of the visuals that I had for you all. I'm going to the podcast now. Code Switch, NPR. Code Switch. The next one, yo, is this racist? Yo, comma, is this racist? Oh, there's one other book that I highly recommend. Hold on, let me get my author here. Highly recommend, but this one is particularly for white people. So usually anybody can read these books, but when I was leading the multicultural development office at Trinity International University, this was one of the favorites of white students and my white colleagues. Phenomenal book. But again, this one may hit home a little bit better if you're white. Anybody can read it. It's called Being White: Finding Our Place in a Multi-Ethnic World, and that's by Harris. Being White. And what it does is it helps to separate white culture from American culture, because often those two are integrated and they really shouldn't be. And so it helps to give you a little sense of identity in and of yourself for those that are, if you're white. But again, anybody can read it, but I know it was a very popular favorite of the white students and my white professor colleagues. All right, a few other podcasts. Identity Politics. That's by Ali. Still Processing. Morris is one of the hosts there. Still Processing. Wesley Morris. That one was endorsed by New York Times. And then the last one I'll give you here on the podcast is Pod Save the People. Pod Save the People with D-Ray. All right. Now, I promised the small group stuff. So there's a whole section on those of us that we really learn and retain information, and we can best process things when we have people contact, right? So either training sessions like this, where we can kind of hear from other perspectives, or small groups, et cetera. So the only training session that I can find that's readily available to the public now, because people are trying to figure out what's going to happen with the pandemic. So a lot of stuff that used to be is no longer, or it's paused. But one of them that, one of the groups that does have a calendar that you can actually sign up for, so it looks like they're moving forward. It's called Race Forward. Race Forward. That's the group. And so they have racial justice trainings. You can just Google Race Forward, and they have racial justice trainings that you can sign up for if that's the way that you desire to receive your information. They talk about building racial equity. On the small group, I've already mentioned all the small group materials. Here's how you form a small group. I'm gonna share with you how to. Has anybody ever done small group work before? Okay, good. I see a few head nods. I see one head nod. Okay. I'm gonna give you 60 seconds on how you do a small group. I'm gonna say it pretty quickly. Just ask me to reiterate if you desire. It is a very effective way, one of the most effective ways of doing life with someone, learning from someone, and then learning about yourself as well. It's contemplative and it's introspective. A small group is where you will gather 6 to 15 friends or colleagues or family members or strangers. 6 to 15 is a good sweet spot. You really don't want less than 6 because sometimes people, they have to cancel. They couldn't find a babysitter or something like that. And you don't want the whole group to have to postpone just because one couple couldn't be there. So 6 to 15, and then you don't really want more than 15. We've had some with as many as 20, but then it gets really tough because, it's hard for everyone to be able to participate in a 60-minute or 90-minute session. You don't want more than 90 minutes. You don't really want more than 15 people. So between 60 minutes and 90 minutes, between 6 and 15 people, you want to meet in one location. You can rotate, but it's best for each book study that you're going to do, or you can even do this on docuseries if you all want to watch a movie together or something like this. But you want to pick a place for the entire series if you can. Okay, that place can be somebody's home where everybody can fit in a living room, or Starbucks, or sometimes libraries will give you a little place. Now, obviously, this is when it's safe. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that you just go out and do this right now. But when you feel like it's safe enough to be around people, then here's what happens. You're going to meet for like 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. Some of the curriculum in the small group literature will tell you what the suggestion is. But if you're going to create it on your own, 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. Sometimes you can do 4 or 5 weeks. It just really kind of depends on what you're going through. And you're going to meet every week. First 15 minutes before you start the 60-minute clock or the 90-minute clock, the first 15, 20 minutes, you give people an opportunity to come in, put their coats down, whatever. You're going to have food at every single meeting. Do not meet without food, some type of hors d'oeuvres or something. Do not meet without food. That reconciliation, a huge part of this is breaking bread. A huge part of this is breaking bread. I want to put in a bias here for a second, okay? I want to be very clear. I'm putting in a bias. This is one of the ways that Jesus taught to be a reconciler. He decided that his best way was to break bread with people. And that's where we get the concept of, it's a Jewish custom as well. And I've had the great privilege of being able to have Shabbat dinners with Jewish friends over in the Middle East. And there's a big concept of breaking bread. You all understand that term, right? We don't really speak that way in America, but you sit down with someone and you talk to them and you have the meal as your comic, because we all have to be nourished. And if you really want to get fancy with it, you can, make something special, or, have special drinks or something like that. But that's it. Now, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be just some peanuts and, different things that you kind of chew on as you guys are talking, but you have to have something to eat. And then you go through that material, you make sure you cut it off at an hour or 90 minutes, because you'll probably get to a point where you can talk ad nauseum. Don't do it. Because if you end up talking for 4 hours in the first session, people may not come back. Imagine if you were going to, a play or something like that, and the play was so good that they were like, hey, we're going to keep going with this. And they go on for 4 hours. If they say, now we want you to come back, next week, you're not coming back. You're probably not. So go ahead and cut it off, and then you can go from there. The other things is, remember the rules of reconciliation. Seek to understand instead of seeking to be understood. You respect everyone. You understand people are going to have perspectives that are different from yours. Don't try to fix people. Don't try to fix people. Let people find their own way. The number one actualization or realization is self-actualization. In other words, on Maslow's chain of, I forgot what it's called, but the greatest way that you will be able to experience life is when you experience it, when you have your own aha moment, as opposed to someone teaching you what to do. All right, that's all I can say about that. If you have more questions, you can email me, and I'm happy to share. Any questions now, though? All right, one of the things that we wanted to do was to give an intense deep dive to anyone who was willing to go for it. And so, Haiti, I think we have someone from this session.
Yes, Nicole Bouye, she is actually on the phone, so you'll be hearing her voice. You won't be able to see her face. She had some internet issues with the storm last night.
Okay.
So Nicole, whenever you're ready, go
All right.
ahead.
well, let me set Nicole up.
Oh, go ahead.
No, okay, thank you. We asked Nicole to do two things, and that was to give us her perspective on bias, define it in her own words, and then teach us how to overcome. Teach us how to overcome. So she's got 5 minutes to do this, and then now you can take it over, Nicole.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and my apologies. The storm last night created some technical difficulties for me this morning. So my Wi-Fi looks like it just got restored, but I still am not able to get onto our servers for work. So I'll work through that after this call, but thank you. And so last week, I unknowingly volunteered to discuss and independently broach the topic of what is implicit bias and how can we overcome it. I racked my brain. I was thinking about it, on and off, and of course throughout the work week. And just as we know, things kind of got busy. But I just want to share, as Clary said, what my perspective of what implicit bias is. So I'd like to begin by defining or discussing what implicit bias is not. It's not an attack on those typically identified as part of the majority or privileged groups or populations. It's not limited to race, ethnicity, and gender. And also implicit bias is not a new concept, it's not a buzzword, and it's not a catchphrase. What it is, however, is an ignorance that resides in all of us as humans. So just to do a little bit of light housekeeping, for those of you who may have felt a way or may have felt like, ignorance is kind of a strong word, or it may have stung a little bit. Let's just define what that actually is. So according to Merriam-Webster, the definition of ignorance is the state or fact of being ignorant, lack of knowledge, education, or awareness. So unless all of us are perfect know-it-alls, kind of like, I don't know if there are any Big Bang Theory fans on here, but unless we're all kind of like a Sheldon type character, and maybe, you've experienced everything the world or universe has to offer, then I think we can all agree that we all have some level of ignorance. And depending on the topic, situation, or experience, I think that we can also agree that our lack of knowledge, education, or awareness on certain things can range from great to minimal. For the sake of this brief presentation, I'd like to focus just on experience for a moment. So as you may recall from the first session, we were introduced to the 3 E's. We were introduced to experience, education, and environment. And also during that time, we talked about when ignorance intersects with experience and environment, how that can create a perfect storm for implicit biases. Sometimes those biases may show consciously, sometimes it may be subconsciously, but they are there and they do exist. Just to kind of provide an example, it can be as simple as maybe as you're walking from, for those of you, I don't know if we're all in Indiana or in Indianapolis or not, but for the Indianapolis location, we've all made the trek from the parking garage to the Anthem building. And in making that trek, we may encounter different people. So it may be as simple as you maybe tightening your grip or your clutch on your purse or your bag as a man or somebody walks past us. It may be something like corresponding or speaking with someone on the phone or via voicemail to schedule an appointment of some sort or an interview. And when we get there to actually see that person face to face, in the back of your mind, you may be thinking, that they do not look the way that I thought they would, just based on that encounter, excuse me. Now, just to take it a step further, let's think about a few of the examples that Clary has shared throughout the last few weeks. So, we watched the video, the Italian version of the study involving kids and dolls, and that, as we know, was a replication of an experiment or study previously done, and the outcome was the same. So, within what that study shows is that we continue to display the prevalence of colorism, self-esteem, and social identity messages that are being projected to our children, to our kids. They're receiving, learning, and internalizing this information daily. Those messages are coming from every direction, whether it be social interactions at school, at work for our teens, books, magazines, apps, social media, music, TV, just from all different directions. And again, that can be subliminal, it can be in your face, and it goes over our head. For instance, Dr. Seuss, we had that conversation in one of our sessions, and several of us have probably read that book, remember that book, or read that book as children, and never immediately, maybe some of us may have noticed some things, maybe some of us did not, but that's just an example. So how do we overcome this implicit bias? Honestly, I'm not sure if we can. I'm hopeful, but I'm really not sure if that's something that we can do. But what we can do is admit that it does exist, and we can, by admitting that it does exist, that's one step, or we can continue to walk around with our eyes wide shut. We may educate ourselves by stepping out of our individual and more than often our homogenized bubbles that we live in. And we may step out of that and learn about other people's experiences, different environments, and be open to conversations, viewpoints, and in some cases, constructive criticism. There are 1,000 ideas and sayings about how much growth can take place in an uncomfortable setting. So I'll just end with this very simple quote from Alan Cohen. And the quote is, "Temporary discomfort pales in the face of long-term awakening." Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Nicole. Do we have any questions for her or any feedback? All right, Nicole, what was the most difficult part of this presentation? The whole thing from the time Haiti gave it to you?
Trying to figure out how to best approach the topic. Honestly, within 5 minutes, I'm not even sure where I landed with that, but just, trying to figure out how to cram a tasteful amount of information or a tasteful amount of opinion into that time on such a broad topic. I mean, it's not just race, it's not just gender. As we, talked about in the last session, it could be, where you're from, an accent, an address. It could be, just any number of things, glasses. It could be, body type. There are just so many types of biases that exist. And how to broach it and still make it palatable and not put people on the defense.
Yeah. So a number of your colleagues, I don't know if you can see it, but a number of your colleagues are saying great job and well done, and thanks for sharing. So I echo that. Was there ever a point? I'm not sure if you like public speaking or not, but was there ever a point that you were like, "Ooh, I don't want to do this"?
Not so much. I mean, I have to speak at conferences and workshops and stuff. It always takes me, it's been a while, so it always takes me a minute to kind of get warmed up, but usually once I get warmed up, I'm good.
Awesome.
So not typically, but you always have, jitters a bit just because.
Yeah. So again, great job. What we wanted to do was give you an opportunity to see what it's like. Now, in certain groups or in certain sessions, we had, 6 or 7 people come together and they all had to figure out what a presentation would look like. In other sessions, we had 3 different groups of like 7 different people, and they all signed up and they were like, "Hey, give me the deep dive." And this is what the deep dive looks like. And the reason why we wanted Nicole to go today is because all of you all are going next week. Everybody here is going next week. Everybody here is going next week. And the reason why I'm saying that is for the same reason that I said it when we opened up the class. You're on your own. You're on your own. And you have the opportunity to take this information and you can file it away in your computer and you can close your laptop and you can go on about your business. If you wrote it down, you can chunk it in the garbage if you want. Or you can do what Nicole did and you can say, I'll step up to the plate. We would not have had time for everybody to go today, but we do have time for everyone to go next week. You're going to be in your own context and you will have the opportunity, whether it's on Friday or any time during the week, you will have the opportunity to say, this isn't mandatory. Why am I doing this? I've got other things to do. You've got a list of resources. Maybe you want to watch one of the Netflix specials. You might be all geared up to watch it. You might have your popcorn and everything all ready, and then you can't remember your Netflix password, which is a sin, by the way. But one thing will lead to another. Someone will call on the telephone, distraction, distraction, distraction. You never get around to it. And all of a sudden, you didn't show up as the facilitator for session 6. You didn't show up. And the reason why I think this is incredibly important, I want to, again, thank Nicole. We exchanged her talking about a phobia. So she was having to talk about phobias, and that's really what bias leads towards. And racism, it's the fear of others, right? You've heard these types of things. It's the fear of others because we don't know what they're going to do to us. We don't know if they're going to take our power, our seat at the table, or our job, et cetera. It's fear. And then what we tried to do is we gave her another fear. Do you all know the number one fear on earth by average? You have to unmute and tell me.
Maybe public speaking.
Public speaking is the number one fear, even more so than like handling snakes or anything like that. It's the number one fear, which is kind of interesting to me. Yeah, public speaking. It's never been a fear of mine because I started when I was 3 years old, speaking in front of groups. But it is the number one fear on average for everyone else, and that's what we did. We said, all right, you have to present for all of us on something that I don't believe Nicole is a sociologist. I don't think that she spends her time every day doing this kind of stuff, but we needed her to present. And that's what you're going to have to do. Now, as I talk about the beloved community and we end this session, we're coming down to the last 10 minutes. So this is the last few minutes that you will have to worry about hearing me talk. This is it. So for those of you that have been ready to check out, your time is coming shortly. You've been tired of my my unfunny jokes. You won't have to worry about that anymore. But I do want to say 2 things about my jokes. Number 1, they are a lot funnier in person. So if you ever get a chance to interact with me, they are fun. I can assure you of that. Okay, number 1. Number 2, I am proof that you can tell a bad joke without it being racist. A lot of times people, they tell these little bad jokes, these off humor jokes, but they're insensitive. So you can do that. Nevertheless, I'm going to make a dramatic statement as I go towards this beloved community. And I hope that I'm being overly dramatic. I hope that I'm exaggerating to the 100th degree. I fear that I'm not. My dramatic statement, and you've heard me allude to this, is that session 6 is life or death. I know that sounds so dramatic. Come on, Clary. What the heck are you talking about? And here's what I'm saying. I'm saying that session 6 is going to be a life or death because it generally starts with something as simple as this. It generally starts with one of those little jokey jokes. Oh, we don't want those people in our community. Oh, man, those people, they don't really keep their lawn up, or they don't they're going to bring our home property values down. Oh, I'll sell my house. I was thinking about selling in a couple of months. They can buy my home. You know, a little jokey joke. Ha, 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 ha. And then that leads to the person in the housing association that heard the joke saying, I wonder if we need to create some stricter rules so that people aren't adversely affected. And then the person that's on the housing association may be married to the lady who's the boss at the big company in town. And now she is potentially saying, I'm not sure if I want to hire this person. And then now that person that was trying to move into that neighborhood can't, which means that they don't have the access to the public schools in that community, which means that they also don't have the access, or they have to drive further to get to the fresh produce for the grocery store. So they can't get the affordable housing there. They can't get the quality education. They can't access the healthcare as far as the hospitals. They have to drive further for those things. They can't get the fresh produce. And so what they are is they're relegated to their own communities, because that's where we want them. We want them to stay with their own people. And what the legislators do, and some of you know this, I certainly do from working with the legislators for years, is they end up drawing little lines called districts so that they can stay in their little area. They can stay in their box. One thing leads to another, and those districts, they'll have a little representative that can come out and speak at the State House. But in most cases, those little districts become cages, because those are food deserts. They have a lack of quality this, a lack of quality that, and people want to get out, but we won't let them. And it often starts with a little jokey joke. And what happens to people that are in a cage is the same thing that happens to my two dogs. I have two dogs. I have a good dog and a bad dog. The big one is good. The bulldog is good. The Yorkie is bad. Do not buy a Yorkie unless you want to buy mine. And here's what happens. If I put both of them in a cage and I leave them in there for too long, sometimes I have to crate them for a couple of minutes or so. But if I leave both of them in that crate for too long, they start acting uncharacteristically. Now, if animals will act uncharacteristically because they've been confined, what do you think about humans? And so those people that have been relegated and they've got a little line drawn around where they can go to school and where they can get their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. If those people are now in that cage, they will experience pain. And what do humans do to alleviate pain? We often take things that help to numb it. And a controlled substance after another often leads to misbehavior. The police is called. Police may not be trained adequately on bias and sensitivity because the police are trained as much as our tax dollars allow it. That interaction turns into a confrontation. The police will always win. And now that person is dead. And it started from a jokey joke. Now that is an exaggeration. It's an overly dramatic little pontification that maybe I shouldn't have mentioned, and I hope never happens, but it has happened before. And the only difference between it happening again is if well-meaning people do nothing. Who do you think those well-meaning people are? Dr. Martin Luther King said this, and I'll close. He said, in the end, we will not remember the loud voices of our enemies, but we will remember the silence of our friends. I'm sharing the definition of the beloved community because that's where we want to end. We'll open it up for any final remarks if anybody has anything to say. But the beloved community, and you can find this information on the King Center website, the beloved community is highlighted here as a global vision because we're all at the front of the line. We don't have to pick at the white guys or the white anybody anymore. When we look at it from a global perspective, if you live in the United States and you are making at least minimum wage, I believe the statistic is you're in the top 25% of the world's income earners. And so this is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, all forms, bigotry and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood, brotherhood, and otherhood. In the beloved community, international disputes will be resolved by peaceful conflict resolution and reconciliation of adversaries instead of military power. Love and trust will triumph over fear and hatred. Peace with justice will prevail over war and military conflict. An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. With that said, it's been a pleasure learning from you. Do we have anyone that would like to say anything before we conclude today? Unmute if you desire.
I just wanted to say,
I just
my voice is
Go ahead.
echoing. Oh, no, it's not echoing. Someone else is speaking. Thank you. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pamela. We'll do Pamela.
I'll
first
just
and
make
then
this,
Danielle.
I'll make this real quick. I just appreciate, someone said early on that we all have our biases, and it's up to us what we're going to do about it. And this really went a long way with normalizing bias, that you're not an ogre or some, awful person because you do have biases of some sort, but it's what you do with the bias. Are you going to let that guide you, or are you going to say, oh, that's not reasonable, let me learn a little bit more about this? So that's all.
Excellent. Thank you, Pamela. Danielle.
I just wanted to say that I have really enjoyed all of these sessions. I think it's been super helpful. I've learned a lot, and kind of like what Pamela said, just echoing, is that it doesn't make you an awful person to have a bias, but actually being able to acknowledge what it is and how you can move forward, consciously making that effort to not have your bias show or to work through that bias, I think has been super helpful too. And I don't know, I mean, for me, I've thoroughly looked forward to these sessions every week and all of the material that we've been provided. I also have two little boys who are 2 and 4, and I plan on getting some of these children's books and walking them through those, just because we do have some Hispanic in us as well. And I just want them to understand their actions and how that can affect all of the people that they're around too. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely looked forward to all of these sessions each week.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. You all can contact me on social, and you have my email, so feel free to do that. We'll turn it over to Haiti as we're concluding now.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so I sound all the way stuffed up. But I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for being here and taking an hour out of your day to for 5 weeks to sit here with us and have these conversations. Like you all said, they've been very helpful, and I hope they've been helpful for you too. We will be sending out a survey, like Clary said. And once we get those surveys back, hopefully everybody does respond to them. Once we get those back, we'll make that list of resources available to everybody, and hopefully we can put it somewhere where everyone has access to it. But with that, thank you all so much and have a great day.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Haiti, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't see anything, so I'm sorry. Okay, so next week.
Yes.
Am I presenting again next week?
There is no next week.
Huh? Oh, there's not?
No, so this is the last session of the training.
Oh, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought we were doing something next week too. Okay, that's my misunderstanding.
No, Clary just kept saying session 6 as to for you all to continue your own.
To continue on. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. At first I took it that way, and then I said, well, maybe he's serious. So okay. I took it figuratively at first, and then I said, maybe it's literal. I don't know. Okay.
no.
All right. Okay, well, feel better. I had like 2 under the
Thank
weather
you.
days. I don't know if it was some bug or something, but yeah, so feel better.
I feel really rough, so I really hope it's not COVID. So
Oh, has anybody? Oh, I hope not either. Okay, we're
yeah,
gonna say it's
no.
not, and it's just the weather because we've
I
been
hope
fluctuating.
so.
So yeah.
But all
Okay.
signs are pointing that way, so hopefully it's not.
All signs are pointing towards what? COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Oh Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna speak healing and non-COVID into your direction. All right.
Thank you so much,
Well,
Nicole.
get some rest and thank you. Thank you guys.